Welcome one and welcome all to Write That Down, a Probitas podcast. I am your host, co-host, whatever you want to call me, Matt Fisher. To my left, Phil Irwin. And across from me, or to my right, or wherever you want to be, it's Mr. Mark Johnson. And another smile. Thanks, guys, for your happy, smiling faces. I really appreciate it. How's everybody doing today? Anybody having a good day, bad day, medium day, week?
I'm moving slowly.
You're moving, like apartments or houses,
No.
or physically?
Physically.
What do you mean? Like, what happened?
A little bit of a back issue, muscle issue, a little tweak. So
That's not good.
No.
I know we've kind of been seeing you walk around the hobbling a bit at the office. Have you noticed it too, Phil?
It's legit. I will say that sometimes when people complain about their back, I think most of us probably say, "Oh, really? Is it that bad?" Well, when Mark mentioned it, he did not make it sound bad. He's like, "Oh, I messed up my back," and then I watched him use the wall as support when he was walking in the office, and so it's the real deal.
Yeah, and people, I think, like Phil, who don't have back problems. I'm assuming you don't have back problems. Like,
Oh, I do.
okay,
Oh, yeah.
so you're just kind of tougher than everybody.
No.
The way I heard it was like people are whiners about their back, which maybe,
I just think it's a common problem. Like, people talk about it a lot.
yeah.
And I remember when I was younger, I used to think, what's the big deal? But I also
So
have
you've had but I mean,
recurring issues. Yeah.
yeah. It's no fun.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah, no back stuff like, and I probably was the same way as you. Feel like I'd hear somebody like, "Oh, my back hurts." I'm like, oh, "Okay, toughen up." Like, I've hurt my body before, but then when you actually physically can't move your body because your back has decided to spasm or displace itself, it's a real deal.
And I'm a chiropractic convert as well.
Oh,
I guess I shouldn't say convert to, because
yeah. It's like, what did you convert from?
I remember when I first got married, my wife was like, "Oh, what do you think about chiropractic care?" And I'm like, "Never been to one." She's like, "Oh, why don't you like them?" I'm like, "I don't not like them. I just have never tried it." And so started going, and tell you what, some of the stuff that I think had been bad a long time resolved itself, and I was sold. It took it took a month, and I was on board.
And I know I mentioned to Mark about the chiropractor. I said, "Are you going to go to the chiropractor?" And he said, "It's a muscle issue."
That's the thing about the back, though, is that if it's out of place, your muscle compensates and becomes tight to try to pull it back. So it probably is a muscle issue, but chiropractic care can still help.
Yes. Very good. So Mark's got a bad back today. How about you, Phil? You doing pretty good today? Okay.
I'm doing all right. It's really hot, right? So it's been like 88, 90 degrees the last few days. And so immediately after work today, after we record this podcast, I'm going out to the track, taking the kids to race some BMX bicycles. And so I'm going to be a sweaty mess. So I'm just mentally preparing for that whole process.
Hydrate yourself.
Yeah.
That's important. Hydration.
Okay.
We talked about that last time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm having a great day. Thanks for asking. I feel really excited because tomorrow we are getting the entire Probitas team together for the first time in 2 years, I think, that we've all gotten together. Mark and Phil have been with the company for a little over a year and a half and have not been with the entire team before. I think you have to have met everybody in person.
We have now.
But I mean, like, it took a long time with COVID and all that crap. Like, this is the first time we're all going to be getting together. So we're going to have a couple company meetings. I'm going to impart some wisdom that pretty much is going to be the part where people sleep through that. And then we are going to, what's after that, Phil?
We're going to play a baseball game. You got to give some backstory.
Did you know we're playing a baseball game tomorrow night, Mark?
No.
So, okay, this is like, Phil, you brought it up. So, and
Go ahead. I knew it was coming.
No, we didn't have to. I wouldn't have done it. You didn't even hear about this, did you, Mark? So this is new to Mark. So I'm going to keep the camera on Mark just for a second here so I can just tell the story to you, Mark, and just get a reaction. So Phil emails me yesterday. I was out of the office yesterday, and he says, "Hey, Matt, can I borrow a glove? I'm right-handed, but I catch with my left." So first off, he wants me to, right? Was that correct?
I want you to know that I throw right, I catch left.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
because most people who play baseball, there's some who would actually catch and throw right-handed. And I shouldn't say that, flippantly. I mean, there's people who are
I was trying to be specific.
have one arm and like Dave Drebecki back in the late 80s. But yes, specifically, he told me, okay, so back to this Mark, he tells me that he needs to borrow a glove and specifically which hand he wants to put the glove on. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why are you doing this, Phil? Are we excited about this game that you want to catch a foul ball? Is this an experience for you? And then I got to thinking, Phil thinks that we're going to be playing baseball. Reality is there's a team in town called the Whiskey Jacks. They're an exhibition league, and we're going to take the team to that. It's going to be kind of a Probitas night. It'll be fun. So in the morning, I go up to him and I say, hey, Phil, just have a quick question about tomorrow. I got your email. We're having our meetings starting at 2:00. We're going to do some headshots, and then we're going to have a couple meetings after that. What? And I prefaced it with Phil, and now nod, right? Phil, I said, Phil, I will be asking you this question, and we are shooting a podcast today, and potentially, not even potentially, we will be talking about it no matter what your answer is.
Yeah, you said.
So I prepared him.
You said it wasn't a setup, which made me super uncomfortable.
Yeah,
because I knew it was a setup.
Kind of. So okay, sorry, Mark. So I say, what are we doing afterwards? And he says, well, afterwards we're doing a team bonding. We're going to play baseball. And so I'm like, okay, so it is what I thought it was. And then we talked it out, and it was, no, Phil, we're going to a baseball game. And then we got into how many players are on the baseball field, and we have 15 in the company, and it de-escalated. I mean,
you made
I didn't really make you feel bad, did I?
Yes. So here's
okay,
how
so I made him feel bad.
Yeah, this is what happened. You said, "What are we doing after the meetings?" I said, "We're playing a baseball game." And so everyone knows, like, Matt sent out a company email saying, "Here's the itinerary," and the only thing that was listed after the meetings was baseball game, Craft Field. It didn't say Whiskey Jack's baseball game. It said baseball game. I'm like, okay, I don't have a glove. I need to borrow one. And so when you started quizzing me so you could, laugh about it, you said, how many players are on a baseball team? It's like, I can't remember. And then you kept saying, we have 15 people on the team. How many players are on a baseball team? And you were being super vague. And I realized in that moment that I must have missed something. And the laugh was on me.
I'm surprised, Matt, that you actually spoiled the secret ahead of time. I thought maybe you would have been the type to actually wait till tomorrow, watch Phil come to this
Give me
meeting,
the glove,
and get him all excited, and then get him to the game.
I couldn't do that.
I'd have my glove, and I'd be like, all right, let's pick teams, and everybody.
I feel like that was a kindness.
Yeah,
Now,
thank
obviously, everybody's going to hear about this because everybody on planet Earth is watching this, but I wasn't going to do that in front of you. I mean, in front of the team.
Yeah.
And point it. Look at Phil.
That's great leadership.
That was kind.
I appreciate it, Matt.
All right.
He already had his theme song ready to put me in, coach.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
ready to play.
Ready to play.
So my wife has been sending me memes all day because I told her the story at lunch, which she thought was hilarious. But she's sending me memes of the kid leaning on the fence, looking and wanting to play the game. And I'm just like, oh man, everyone. So my boss and my wife think I'm a joke.
No, okay. I'm
Classic.
saying this out. I do not think Phil is a joke. I thought it was hilarious, and I just felt like the world should hear it because it was funny. Now, Mark, do you think anybody else thought that we were going to go play a baseball game as a team?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either. No, it's okay though because Craft Field is. It's if you're not from Grand Forks or been around here a while, you wouldn't know that that's a baseball field. And you're new to town.
No, I assumed it was a baseball field because it said baseball game, Craft Field. I was ready to go.
Okay. All right. So that's a good transition, maybe.
Yeah.
Into our quote for the day, just because I said the word transition. The quote for today that in my blackout state at the office where I just say something and then blurt out, write that down, and Phil writes it down is, you always need to be playing out of your comfort zone or else you will not survive. Okay. So obviously very important words that Phil wrote down, and not because he thought they were important, because I said write that down and he did so.
This one sounds urgent.
It does. So why can you remember in your in your recollections why I would say such a thing?
I absolutely remember.
Oh, sweet.
Yep.
These are the best because
This one I remember specific project I was working on. So I got, season 1, we talked about, I guess like last minute orders and how often we get calls saying like, hey, we need this tomorrow. We need this the next day. Stuff that is sometimes doable, sometimes pretty challenging. So I got one of those types of orders. It was huge. So it was a school. They needed a specific item in a short amount of time. And it was a pretty complicated project. And so I started, I'm pretty sure I grabbed you and I'm like, I don't think I can pull this off. And you're like, you can pull it off. Email this guy. And each person I emailed, it got progressively like more dire. Like, we can't pull it off. So when I had run out of options, I thought, I'm like, Matt, this isn't going to happen. I have to tell the client no. And you're like, no, I think you should still see if you can make it happen. I thought you were crazy. And so I'm sure I said something like, you're crazy. I can't do this. And you blacked out and you said, you need to be playing out of your comfort zone or you won't survive. And then you disappeared. Didn't offer any more assistance. And eventually I got the job done. I was super stressed out though, but that is the situation. You're pushing me way out of my comfort zone to try to get me to land this sale.
And you did land it, right?
I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now, the second part, do you feel as though you are surviving?
And not because of your help.
Oh.
But I've been doing all right. I'm here a year and 7 months later.
All right. Well, way to survive. Mark Jensen, but thank you for that recollection too, Phil, because like I said, I blacked out.
Do you remember that?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Not even a little bit. But I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we got the order, really, to help the client. Mark Jensen, I have a question for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. When is a time in your life where you have gone outside your comfort zone in order to survive?
Well, I've been doing some thinking about that, and you know what? I think it actually happened today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
When you two decided to wear matching shirts and not tell me, so I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm daring to be different.
Wow.
To step aside and be different, and I'm going to survive because I'm willing to be different, not to follow. So maybe is that kind of the case? Because you guys didn't let me know. So you know what? But this goes to show that, you know what? I can step out of my comfort zone.
Okay, this is 100% truth because, we've got some very fashionable people that work at Probitas. Myself, I'm not one of them. Phil, I would say, is very fashionable. Mark Jensen is right near the top. And he came to the office and we didn't say anything. Like, Phil, I didn't text or call you, right?
Yeah, we don't have a group chat where it's like bro wardrobe chat or something.
So that didn't happen, but we showed up together. We knew the podcast was happening, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if Mark will have it on. And Mark, if you can look at his head, he got his hairs cut today, so he was a little later to the office because he goes in at about 8 o'clock to get his hairs cut, and he saw it. I mean, and we didn't say anything to you, so I'm glad you brought this up. So how did you feel when you saw that we were wearing the same shirt?
I just thought to myself, oop, nerds.
Oh, brother.
Okay. You know what? They got together. I'm like, come on, people. I'm more worried about each time I come in here, like, did I wear this shirt the last time?
Yeah.
I don't want to repeat on a shirt.
It's true, though, because Mark is all about individuality. And so
Yes.
he likes to do stuff that's not just the standard, not the norm. And that's why his style is superior to ours. Me is totally utility. I'm like, I know we're doing the podcast, so one of our managers, Savannah, wants to make sure I'm wearing a logo. This has a logo. That's the only reason I picked the shirt.
So Phil was a grab and go. Mine was probably similar. I don't even know if the light was on when I grabbed the shirt. So a complete chance. But Mark had a decision to make because he saw this right away in the morning and he went home and he could have put on the shirt. Right. So, and now you're saying that brought you outside of your comfort zone. Do you feel as though being outside that comfort zone now in this setting, do you feel like that was a wise and good choice?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it makes me an individual.
Very good. Okay, I like that.
Stepping outside the boundaries.
So this is the kind of the second part of, the quote is, or else you will not survive. Like, so dire, right? I mean, it's like you have to live outside your comfort zone or you won't survive. So I feel like that's a great point, Mark, with individualism. I mean, you got to be yourself in order to survive, right?
Right. And plus the thing of it is, probably for me, I maybe only have like 2 gray shirts in my closet, unlike the rest of the staff who decides to always wear black and gray.
Right.
Black and gray. And you know what? I'm kind of more of a color person.
You are. I mean,
the brighter, the better.
You get upset like when our reps come and like, there's only 17 colors. Why do we not have the full palette of 78?
Right. It's true. When there's bright colors, he'll actually write down like the model numbers of the specific product.
And I start shopping.
Right. So survival. Phil, do you feel like there's been times in your life where you've like really had to stretch yourself, get out of your comfort zone in order to survive?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of ways I could go with this. One of them that came to me is, I guess, public speaking or public performance. It's super common, I think, for people to be uncomfortable addressing a new audience, a large audience, or, a changing audience, right? So one day you're working with this type of person, the next day you're asked to work with the next type. But most people go through that transition, and I had 2 things in my life where I had to constantly be operating outside of my norm, and if you fold, like, you're just not going to survive. One of them was with my previous job. I was doing public speaking at a college, so I was working at an admissions office. I had to talk to people from super diverse backgrounds, all of different parts of the country they were coming from, sometimes even other countries, and I had to, on the fly, every day, talk to a brand new audience. You had no idea who was going to be there, and you just had to chat with them, give a speech, give a presentation, and sometimes you were in a small group, sometimes you were up on stage. It was just crazy, but if you fold under the pressure of a situation like that, it's not long before they're just pulling you off stage completely. They're like, you're not making sense.
Like the old hook.
Yeah, the hook. They're going to get you off stage. So that was something where I had to adapt daily in order to survive. The other one that came to mind is I used to be a very active musician. And there's something interesting about music or holding an instrument in your hand where you're able to almost like flip a switch. Like, I always thought that music was far different experience than giving a speech or giving a presentation, because you don't really have anything to hide behind when you're giving a speech. But when you're playing an instrument, you're holding something in your hand, you're behind a drum set, a guitar, whatever it is. But that's something where you have to flip a switch and just be able to go into actual performance mode. And, if you don't get over those sorts of fears really quick, like, you're the most boring thing ever on stage, regardless of your skill level. But those are 2 areas that, man, I did so many concerts and so many presentations over the year. Like, I don't even care anymore. You could say, hey, you're going to give a speech today at the Xcel Energy Center, and I would say, fine. Like, I'm not going to prepare any different for a situation like that than I would if I was meeting with a client in the office tomorrow.
That's awesome. I think so. I think that's one of those things where if you can get comfortable outside your comfort zone, you're going to gain a skill. You're going to gain something. So I feel like it's one of those things that people really don't like to play out there. People just like to be comfortable. They like to have their stuff the way it is, and then they just go throughout. Do you see, Mark, that in your life it's something that you've gravitated towards? Not really. How do you see yourself in the whole being uncomfortable for a while, like, and then like Phil's talking about, where then you can kind of gain some skills and then get more comfortable and grow from that?
Well, yeah, I just think for the most part, people do, and everybody gets in that comfort zone. But I guess I've kind of been one where I guess I've had several life experiences that just have thrown me outside of the comfort zone. So it's kind of like, you either survive or not. To be honest with you, probably a little bit is I did not know if this type of job is for me. It's like, yeah, I'm a people person, I think, or maybe I'm shy. I don't know. Am I a people person or am I shy?
You're absolutely
No answer.
Yeah, you're
Obviously,
a people
you're a
person.
people person,
Right.
Mark.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh,
you are
right.
like the people person.
But like, so for me, like probably like even in this role, like the comfort zone where I had to step out is like the back side of doing, the back to computer work. I'm one like, I guess we could be at an event. I have no problem standing in front talking to people. My comfort zone is probably now when I got to go back, probably just with the technology part of it. It's like, oh my gosh, just because, with a lot of my positions, I've not had to do that.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, the comfort zone there, but then once you kind of learn it, and I ask plenty of questions along the way, but.
Yeah. And that's part of learning and growing too, is when you're outside of that comfort zone, there's people out there who are experienced in, if you will, who can help you along and get you to that point. And I think that's a lot of the things that people don't understand either, is like, oh, if I step outside of my comfort zone, I'm going to just be there by myself. And the reality is there's lots of people out there in that area, and they're growing, or they've grown, and they're probably reaching for another thing as well.
And I think too, I've been fortunate, I guess you could say maybe fortunate, but even a lot of my past careers, I spent several years in the newspaper industry, and I came out of college with a public relations degree and said I would never work in a newspaper. Right. My very first job was a newspaper, and I spent about 15 years in the newspaper industry, and that part was interesting, just because coming from the public relations person, it's, hey, I'll give you the campaign, the good slogan, let's go. And now being a journalist, and probably part of it is one of my college professors, if you were a PR student, journalism, you knew you're going to get a C no matter what.
Right.
If you're the journalist student, you're going to get the A. So I think coming out, but it's like, I remember just saying I would never work in a newspaper.
Right.
And there's a lot of great joy, but I will say there's times there it was out of my comfort zone, just because we did not do like a lot of hard news. But like if I could go do that story about Jane Doe and what she's done to the community in her life, those are easy for me. But when I had to cover like a court case, that was out of my comfort zone, just because a little bit is I was not the true journalist. I'm not going to stand and say, why did they do that?
Right.
Should you have done that, ask that? I'd be more like, okay, how can we make a good headline out of this?
Yeah.
Sure. But that's being out of the comfort zone there, but you learn from it and you just kind of do it.
I think that's your relational side too, like, because you like to be able to connect with people and have like the feel good story. So that makes a lot of sense. But I was thinking about when you telling that story, like that second half of the quote is, you're not going to survive. Maybe another way that we could rephrase that, if you're allowing of that, Matt, is,
we haven't rephrased any of this genius yet, but
yeah.
Well, maybe we kind of have.
So it's like, you won't survive, meaning like you can't continue with your current job. You're going to get canned. You're not going to be able to operate at the same level. And I think all of us face that to some extent. It's like no one enjoys that feeling of discomfort. But if you just say, oh, I'm not going to do it, well, you're done. There's a separation. There's something that has to happen if somebody's unwilling to operate in that way, at least to some capacity. And, in Mark's story, like, out of his comfort zone, but he did it. And he was in it for 15 years, you said?
Probably.
Yeah.
Somewhere around
there.
So
a prime example, like he made the adjustment and then he stayed in the industry and thrived for that long.
Right.
So with your words of wisdom, Matt, and you have this quote, so when has this happened to you? Do you have anything you can think of?
I don't know. I mean, in my craziness of what I do as a human being, I feel like I kind of live in a crazy where I'm just always doing stupid things. But one thing, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about just a decision that I made in my life that took me down a path, and it's a javelin. A javelin is an implement of war. It's something that was used back thousands of years ago to destroy enemies from a distance. It's also an event in track and field. And as a freshman in high school, I was a football player, a basketball player, and I played baseball, because those are the sports that you play in Grand Forks, and that's what I did. And I got a just a knock on the door, or somebody said, hey, you should throw the javelin. It was probably Coach Tandesky at the time, and he said, hey, why don't you play quarterback? You got an arm, why don't you throw the javelin? And at that point, I'm like, well, what's a javelin? I'm 15, and I don't know what you're talking about. So something's that small, like, I'm like, okay, I'll throw the javelin. And truly, I got a college scholarship to throw the javelin. And that brought me to the school I went to, which put me in connection with the people that set me down a path. And even something as small as that can lead you down a path. And that's where I think we get that no that we say all the time. It's like if somebody asks you to do something, it's like, even if it's like, hey, do you want to go to a barbecue with these people that you've never met before in the park, but this is kind of the group of friends? I think a lot of times our answer is no, even though that's because it's out of our comfort zone. It's like, no, I want to stay with my friends. I want to stay with the family that I'm with. I want to just stay at home, watch TV. But even those micro things that you think about, if you can step out of your comfort zone at those points, I think it can lead you down a path. Or
if somebody says, hey, do you want to go to a baseball game? And you say, no, I want to play a baseball game. I'm out. I mean,
ooh. You mean like baseball terms, like
you might miss the game. You're out.
Phil, you're really getting baseball now.
Yeah, there's a lot of metaphors in this episode.
You've picked up a lot since we met this morning. You didn't know a lot about baseball. You even know some of the calls right now. So, no, I appreciate that. I think that's good knowledge, good wisdom. Before we let it go for the day, I want to throw it out. Anything else on your mind before we let her go for the day? And Phil gets to go sweat at the racetrack, and Mark gets to go in his cool apartment and just get his back healed.
And well, I need to do a little shout out today.
Oh, yes. Okay. Please shout out.
Shout out to Shannon Baker and the warehouse manager.
Oh, yes.
Hey, Shannon,
yes.
this one's for you.
Shannon, great shout out to you. We really appreciate what you do at Probitas. So, other than that, I think that's a wrap for the episode this week, guys. And for all of you who are looking for swag in the world, always check out probitaspromo.com. Get a hold of us anytime. We got your swag.